What's up, ladies and gentlemen? How are we all doing today? Before we get started, I just want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful women out there that are watching and listening to this. I didn't release a video yesterday, so I didn't get a chance to tell you that, but I just wanted to let you know on behalf of all of us men out here that we appreciate you. And it's been a while since I made a breaking news or update video about Game of Thrones, so today I want to do that because there is some very exciting news within our community right now. I'm sure most of you know by now, HBO is in the developmental stages of creating another television series based off this incredible fantasy world that George R.R. Martin has created. The news broke about a week ago that stated HBO was in the process of developing 4 different spin-offs based within the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, which is great news because I think I can speak for all of us when I say we do not want this to end. We might want closure with Game of Thrones, but I know most of us would love to have more, assuming it's done right. And luckily for us, it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen, and we actually got a confirmation from the man himself, George R.R. Martin. Yesterday, George posted an update on his Not a Blog, and I will put the link down in the description just in case you would like to go and check that out, but I want to read to you exactly what George said so I don't misquote him. I think you will find some of this to be very interesting and exciting as I did. George said, "So while I was on the road out California way, the story broke about the 4 Game of Thrones spin-offs that HBO is developing. And of course the news has since spread everywhere, all over the web and all over the world. Yes, it's true, more or less, though, as is all too common these days, various distortions and misapprehensions have crept into some of the reports along the way. And television being the fast-moving business that it is, there have already been some further developments. For what it's worth, I don't especially like the term spin-off, and I don't think it really applies to these new projects. What we're talking about are new stories set in the secondary universe, to borrow from Tolkien's term, of Westeros and the world beyond, the world I created for A Song of Ice and Fire. It is a world, and a pretty big one, and if there were 8 million stories in the Naked City back in the 50s, just think how many more there are in an entire world, and one with thousands of years of recorded history. None of these new shows will be spinning off from Game of Thrones in the traditional sense. We are not talking Joey or After MASH or even Frasier or Lou Grant, where characters from one show continue on to another. So all of you who are hoping for the further adventures of Hot Pie are doomed to disappointment. Every one of the concepts under discussion is a prequel rather than a sequel. Some may not even be set on Westeros. Rather than a spin-off or prequel, however, I prefer the term successor show. That's what I've been calling them. Yes, I am involved and have been for months. I had my first meeting with HBO about the possibility of a successor show back in August. When I pitched them 2 possible series, one of those is among the concepts being developed and one is not. In the months that followed, other writers were brought in and pitched other ideas. Ultimately, HBO decided to go ahead with 4 separate developments to be written by Max Borenstein, Jane Goldman, Brian Helgeland, and Carly Ray, and I apologize if I mispronounced any of those names. It is stated in some of the reports that I am working with 2 of the 4 writers. That's not quite right. I've actually been working with all 4 of the writers. Every one of the 4 has visited me here in Santa Fe, some of them more than once, and we've spent days together discussing their ideas, the history of Westeros and the world beyond, and sundry details found only in the world of Ice and Fire and the lands of Ice and Fire. They are all amazing talents, and I am excited to be working with them. In between visits, I've been in touch with them by phone, text, and email, and I expect there will be a lot more back and forth as we move forward. And there's more. We had 4 scripts in development when I arrived in LA last week, but by the time I left we had 5. We had added a 5th writer to the original 4. No, I will not reveal the name here. HBO announced the names of the first 4 and will no doubt announce the 5th as well, once his deal has been closed. He's a really terrific addition, however, a great guy and a fine writer, and aside from me and maybe Ilio and Linda, I don't know anyone who knows and loves Westeros as well as he does. Some of the reports of these developments seem to suggest that HBO might be adding 4 successor shows to the schedule to replace Game of Thrones. Decades of experience in the television and film have taught me that nothing is ever really certain. But I do think it's very unlikely that we'll be getting 4 or 5 series. At least not immediately. What we do have here is an order for 4, now 5, pilot scripts. How many pilots will be filmed and how many series might come out of that remains to be seen. If we do get 5 series on the air, I might have to change my name to Dick Direwolf. The one goal that everyone involved shared here is to make these new shows just as good as Game of Thrones itself. Not an easy task, mind you, David Benioff and Dan Weiss are a tough act to follow, as all those Emmys demonstrate. I can't tell you what the shows will be about, well I could but I won't, but I will tell you a couple of the things they won't be, which will disappoint some of you, sure, but better to do that now than later, I think. We're not doing Dunk and Egg. Eventually, sure, I'd love that, and so would many of you, but I've only written and published 3 novellas to date, and there are at least 7 or 8 or 10 more I want to write. We all know how slow I am, and how fast a television show can move. I don't want to repeat what happened with Game of Thrones itself, where the show gets ahead of the books. When the day comes that I finish telling all my tales of Dunk and Egg, then we'll do a TV show about them. But that day is still a long way off. And also, we're not doing Robert's Rebellion either. I know thousands of you want that. I know there's a petition. But by the time I finish writing A Song of Ice and Fire, you will know every important thing that happened in Robert's Rebellion. There would be no surprises or revelations left in the show. Just the acting out of conflicts whose resolutions you already know. That's not a story I want to tell just now. It would feel too much like a twice-told tale. More than that, I will not say. Feel free to make your guesses if you like, but I'm not going to be confirming or denying anything, so don't expect replies. And yes, before someone asks, I'm still working on Winds of Winter, and will continue working on it until it's done. I will confess, I do wish I could clone myself, or find a way to squeeze more hours into the day, or a way to go without sleep, but this is what it is, so I keep on juggling. Winds of Winter, 5 successor shows, Fire and Blood, 4 new Wildcards books, some things I can't tell you about yet, but it's a good thing I love my work. Okay, wow. Now I know that's a lot to take in, but I'm really happy George took the time to give us these details and set the record straight. Now let's go over a few of these things. First things first, George said none of these new television shows that are in development will be a quote-unquote spin-off series, which means we will not get any continuation of any of these characters from the Game of Thrones series, nor will we get anything immediately leading up to the Game of Thrones series. So basically, whatever new show we get, it will be completely all new characters, which I think is a good thing, because just like he said, he doesn't want to create another show that feels too similar to the one D&D are producing now. It will be set in the same universe, but it could potentially not even take place in Westeros and the Seven Kingdoms. Chances are the new show may be set in Essos. Secondly, George said he has worked with and will continue to work with all of the writers HBO has brought on to create a new show or shows, depending how many get picked up after the pilots. This is great news for the television series they are creating. We need George involved as much as possible so the story stays on track and follows the theme he's going for in his writing. But on the other hand, that's bad news for everyone waiting for Winds of Winter. The longer George spends time on a new show, leaves him with less time to finish Winds of Winter. So you're going to have to take the good with the bad on that one. And another interesting detail George gave us was that HBO hired a 5th writer, which is insane because HBO is obviously fully committed to expanding on this world in the television format, which makes me very happy because I want this to go on forever if it's possible. But the best news about this 5th writer they hired is what George said about him. George said other than him and Ilio and Linda, he doesn't know anyone else who knows and loves Westeros as well as he does. Now that is very, very exciting because this is the type of man we need on this project. We don't just want a fanboy of George's work. We need someone that actually knows the story and the message George is trying to relay in his story. And with that being said, I hope this writer is locked in to provide his services. If George said this guy knows his shit, then I want him on board, especially if George can't always be there. Perhaps this man or Ilio and Linda can be an extension of George to ensure that the right story is being told on television. And another thing we have to keep in mind here, which George basically said himself, just because HBO hired 5 writers and they are working on 5 different new shows, doesn't mean we are getting 5 new shows. Not all pilots get picked up, and if you know the story about the Game of Thrones original pilot, then you know it was an absolute disaster and damn near derailed the show before it even got off the ground. But yes, they are working on 5 new shows, but we do not know which, if any, get picked up. HBO could end up firing all 5 of these writers and hiring 5 new ones. This stuff happens all the time, but given how successful Game of Thrones has been for them, you can pretty much guarantee we are going to get at least 1 new show. And another important thing to note is which shows we will not be getting anytime soon. We will not get Dunk and Egg nor Robert's Rebellion. But George said Dunk and Egg isn't completely out of the question yet. He said that he just wants to finish fleshing out the story more before he jumps into it like he did with Game of Thrones. He does not want the television show passing him by again before he can even finish the story. And the good news about not getting Robert's Rebellion is, George said when the A Song of Ice and Fire novels are finished, we will have all the remaining answers we need pertaining to Robert's Rebellion, which is great news because I was hoping we wouldn't be left with only vague information about everything that happened during that time period. We will be getting all those answers, which is relieving. And last but certainly not least, George is still working on Winds of Winter. Shocking, right? I think we all knew that, and I hope none of you are expecting it anytime soon because I'm afraid he is waiting to release it after the entire Game of Thrones series has ended. I don't know why I feel that way, but for some reason I think he wants to wait for the show to end before he puts anything else out, but that's just my opinion. But I think this will about do it for today. I hope this news was exciting to you as it was for me. I need everybody to comment below and tell me which new series do you want HBO to produce. Would you like Aegon's Conquest? Would you like The Long Night? The Dance with Dragons, Blackfire Rebellion? Comment down below and let's decide which part of the story would be best to explore some more. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate you stopping by and spending some of your time with me. Also, I have to give a big thank you to everyone supporting the channel over on Patreon. I really appreciate all the love some of you have given me. I can't thank you enough. And if you are a Patreon supporter, make sure you go check out my last post over on Patreon because I will be doing a Q&A for you. So make sure you leave some questions for me there. Thanks, and I'll see you all down in the comment section. Bye.